I bought that mountain house because I was done being told what to do. I'd already lost a marriage, half my savings, and every ounce of peace I thought I had left. And 3 days after moving in, a woman I'd never met stood on my porch with bolt cutters and told me my house was no longer mine. That was the moment I realized this wasn't an HOA dispute. This was a power grab, and I was standing in the middle of it. I'm telling this from my own point of view because I lived every second of it. I felt it in my chest, in my hands, in the way my stomach dropped when I realized I might lose the last thing I owned. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA that thought it owned you, not just your property, you're going to understand exactly why this still keeps me up at night. I'm Daniel Brooks, early 40s, recently divorced. I spent most of my career working in system security, data access control, risk analysis. The kind of job where you learn very quickly that control isn't about shouting the loudest, it's about who holds the keys. After my divorce, I didn't want noise or neighbors or meetings. I wanted quiet, trees, space, somewhere I could sit on a porch in the morning and not feel like I was being judged for existing. That's why I bought the cabin, 3 bedrooms, cedar siding, tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains, far enough off the road that you could hear the wind before you ever heard a car. It smelled like damp earth and pine needles and old wood. The kind of place that feels like it's been waiting for someone who needs to disappear for a while. I emptied my savings to buy it, every cent I had left after lawyers and court fees. I remember standing in the living room on my first day holding a paint bucket and a crowbar thinking, this is it. This is where things finally stop falling apart. I didn't even make it through the first afternoon. At exactly 10 in this morning on day 3, my front door opened. Not knocked. Opened. I turned around thinking maybe the realtor had forgotten something. Instead, I saw her. Margaret Langston. Perfect hair. Crisp blazer. Heels clicking against the hardwood floor I'd just finished polishing. She walked in like she'd done it 100 times before, like my house was a showroom and I was an inconvenience. She didn't even look at me at first. She walked straight to the mantel, dragged a manicured finger across it, frowned at the dust, and sighed like I'd personally disappointed her. We have standards here, she said. Not hello, not who she was, just that. Then she adjusted a framed photo of my father. My father like it was crooked in her living room. That's when I felt it. That familiar crawling sensation. The same one I'd felt sitting across from divorce attorneys while strangers discussed my life like a spreadsheet. She finally turned to me and smiled the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. I'm Margaret Langston, HOA President, Pinecrest Estates. She handed me a thick red folder like it was a weapon. Inside were bylaws notices and a printed demand highlighted in yellow. Bylaw 4.2, Emergency Access. She told me I had 24 hours to provide a physical key to my home so the HOA could enter in the event of an emergency. She also casually mentioned that I owed $15,000 in back maintenance fees from the previous owner due immediately. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd I didn't know what else to do. I told her there had to be a mistake. I'd just bought the place. The title was clean, no liens, no unpaid fees. She didn't blink. Those fees follow the property, she said, not the owner. Then she pulled out a tablet and started typing. Her nails clicked against the glass, slow and deliberate. Failure to comply results in a $500 daily fine, she added without looking up. Starting at midnight, I felt the weight of the last 2 years press down on me all at once. The divorce, the court orders, the feeling of being boxed in by rules written by people who never asked what I wanted. I told her calmly that I worked in high-security environments, that I wasn't comfortable with a physical key sitting in an unlocked box at a community clubhouse run by volunteers. She smiled wider. That's not my problem. When she finally left, walking back to her white luxury SUV like she'd just finished inspecting a rental car, I stood there in my own living room and realized something that hit harder than any fine. This house wasn't a sanctuary. It was a prison with better views. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, listening to the mountain wind, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe this was just HOA nonsense. Maybe if I paid the fees and gave them the key, it would all go away. But deep down I knew better. The next morning I didn't give her a key. Instead I installed a biometric lock. No keyhole, no cylinder, Just reinforced steel, a 3D facial scanner, infrared backup, and a dedicated battery that could last 72 hours without power. It was a prototype I'd worked on years ago. Overkill for a cabin, sure, but not for someone who understood how power really works. At dawn, I sat on the porch with a cup of black coffee and watched Margaret's SUV crawl up the winding road. This time she brought a locksmith. She pointed at my door and barked an order. The locksmith walked up, reached for a handle that wasn't there, and froze. He ran his hand over the smooth metal plate, squinted at the blue light glowing beneath the glass. "Ma'am," he muttered, stepping back, "I'm not touching this. There's no physical bypass. If I try to force it, I'm liable for damages I can't cover." Margaret's face turned a shade of red I didn't know humans could achieve. She looked at the lock, then at me, and for the first time I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Uncertainty. "Morning," I said, taking a slow sip of coffee. "Forget your face at home." She left without saying another word. 2 hours later, my inbox exploded. Unauthorized modification, $250. Failure to provide emergency access, $500 per day. Back fees, $15,000. By noon, the HOA portal showed a balance of $16,250. I sat at the kitchen counter staring at the screen, feeling smaller by the second. I hadn't even unpacked my boxes. I was already drowning. That was the moment I almost quit. I remember putting my head in my hands and thinking, maybe I should just sell. Walk away. Take the loss. I was tired, emotionally exhausted, broke in ways that had nothing to do with money. And then something inside me snapped. Not anger, focus. I started looking, quietly, carefully. The HOA portal wasn't secure. Outdated database. Poorly configured permissions. I didn't break anything. I didn't alter a single file. I just looked. And what I found changed everything. There was a recurring payment, $7,000 a year, listed as vacant lot security, billed to my address. The recipient, Langston Landscaping and Security. I searched the state registry. Owner Silas Langston, her son. That was the moment I realized I wasn't being targeted because of a key. I was in the way. The previous owner had died. The house sat empty, and for years it had quietly funneled HOA money into her family's business. My purchase ended that revenue stream. And Margaret Langston does not lose revenue streams quietly. That afternoon she tried to have my water shut off. A county truck showed up. The worker looked uncomfortable. I asked him on camera to cite the statute that allowed a private HOA to terminate a public utility without a court order. He couldn't. He left. Margaret stood at the edge of my property line and told me the board had voted to expedite foreclosure proceedings, that my defiance constituted a safety risk. I watched her drive away and realized she was trying to force a seizure before I could expose her. That weekend was hell. Letters slid under my gate. Notices printed on heavy cream paper with gold seals that looked official but weren't yet. A deadline. Monday morning. I barely slept. I cataloged everything. Emails, videos, logs. I found procedural violations. No quorum, no proper notice. A rushed emergency vote. Still, it didn't feel like enough. Sunday night, a black sedan sat at the edge of my driveway for 30 minutes without moving. No lights, no plates I could see, just watching. That was the first time I was genuinely afraid. Monday morning at exactly 8 they came. Margaret, 2 board members, a contractor with bolt cutters. She declared they were taking possession. I didn't yell. I didn't block the door. I smiled. I told her I was ready to comply with Bylaw 4.2, that I'd provide emergency access immediately. I invited the board to register their faces as digital keys. I even handed her a biometric data waiver. She refused, on camera, in front of neighbors. That refusal was everything, because that night she made her fatal mistake. They came back with industrial cutting equipment, a generator, tools designed to destroy. Sparks flew as the blade bit into my door, and then the valley lit up. 5 sheriff vehicles, dozens of neighbors, phones recording from every angle. Margaret froze, holding a generator cable caught in 1,000 lenses. Her son tried to run. The sheriff didn't just stop them. He arrested them. On my lawn. For attempted burglary, vandalism, intimidation. The ledgers came out. The fraud. $150,000 stolen. The HOA was dissolved. As they were led away, Margaret didn't look angry anymore. She looked small. The next morning I stood on my porch staring at a melted lock and a scarred door and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Because power doesn't come from titles or bylaws. It comes from knowing when to stand your ground and refusing to hand over the keys to your life.